Thanks.
Think we're still expecting a few more folks. Might just wait a minute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. I was having problems with my volume before.
I have just a short little slide deck for us today. Kick things off.
Great. I also see Campbell on there. Campbell, was there, do you want to do an update on Delta Conservancy activities and programs on?
Certainly could do that.
Great. We'll just add you to that group in the agenda.
Okay.
How's that look, Alex?
Looks good. I see it.
Okay. Jay, do you want to roll with an introduction?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Ziegler, the Delta Water Master, and delighted to convene all of you here in this ongoing discussion that Michael George really brought us together in having and thinking about the Delta Measurement Experimental Consortium as a really critical advisor to this office in thinking about the best methodologies to measure diversions and consumptive use in the legal delta. And so I just want to express my appreciation to all of you for your continuing guidance and thoughts, both formally in this process and then just in regular communication with a number of you, and thinking about how we actually true up an understanding, shared understanding of actual diversion in the delta, and kind of build on that consensus around. And so we have a few reports on tap today to think about. We're going to give you kind of a number of you probably are beginning to report consistent with the SB 88 water reporting requirements, and so Alex is going to give you a bit of a demo looking at the new Cal Waters program that was just open for reporting a few weeks ago and will soon be open for in-Delta reporters. And so we're going to talk a bit about the SB 88 recently adopted regulations, implications there. And we're also going to hear from several folks, Metropolitan Water District, the Nature Conservancy, Kasana SWRCB with regard to the ongoing UC ag and natural resources work in looking at it's really kind of exciting because it's the only multi-year project in the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program. And then with Campbell Ingram joining us today, I thought he could also give us an update on current projects that the Delta Conservancy is engaged in. So we look forward to our discussion today. We'll plan to probably be about 90 minutes, but just look forward to kind of engaging with you all on a series of topics here today. Next slide, Will.
First, I think we may want to do a round of introductions
Oh,
just
yeah,
because it's
yeah.
a few new
We
folks
may
in the
have some
group.
new folks on as I look at the list. Yeah, let's make
Um,
sure.
I'll go ahead and start. I'm a senior engineer in the Office of the Delta Water Master at the State Water Board. Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm an engineer with Office of the Delta Water Master. I work with Will and Jay.
Hi, I'm John with the Office of the Delta Water Master, Senior Environmental Scientist.
I'm Amy, and I am the communications specialist with the Delta Water Master.
Campbell?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Campbell Ingram, Executive Officer of the Delta Conservancy.
Thank you, Campbell. Russ?
Yes, Russ Ryan, Program Manager with Metropolitan Water District and manage our Delta Islands.
Thanks, Russ. Brett?
I'm Brett Baker with the Central Delta Water Agency.
Thanks, Brett. Kosina?
Hi everyone, I'm Kosana Suvachadev, UC Davis Professor of Extension and Biometeorology Specialist.
Thank you. Linda Garcia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Linda, and I'm from the Nature Conservancy, and I'll be supporting some of the water reporting for our Staten Island properties. Nice to meet you all.
Great. Welcome. Max?
I'm Max Mutter. I'm a program manager with the Freshwater Trust, and we help some Delta diverters report.
Great, thanks. And Kirk?
Kirk Klosmeyer with the Nature Conservancy, and I'm sad to say that Marisol has moved on to another role at another organization, and so we'll be missing her. But we have Linda to help out with some of the reporting, and I'll be filling in on some of the data collection.
Terrific. Annalise?
Hi, I have a cold. I'm off, so I'm going to stay off camera. I'm Annalise Bloom. I'm a research fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California on their water team. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Annalise. Greg?
Greg Gartrell, also with Public Policy Institute, California, as an adjunct fellow.
Thanks for joining us, Greg. George?
Hi, George Hartman. I'm an attorney in Stockton. I represent reclamation districts, and I'm happy to say I've been part of this process from day one.
Thanks, George. Naomi?
Hi, I'm Naomi, part of the water rights team at MBK Engineers.
Thank you. Kelsey?
Hello, Kelsey Gill, also with MBK Engineers in the water rights group.
Thank you, Kelsey. Shay?
Hi, I'm Shay Rajgopal. I'm with TWR. I'm a Delta modeler.
Welcome, Shay. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Constable. I'm a staff at the Delta Stewardship Council and Planning Division.
Thanks, Dan. We also have three that I don't have the full names. Apologies for not knowing. Ackerman?
Mark Ackerman, Deputy Refuge Manager at Stone Lakes.
Thank you. Now, Burns?
Hi, my name is Shelley Burns. I work with the Department of Water Resources in our real estate branch, and I help some of our tenants and program managers with their reporting.
Terrific. Thanks for joining us. And the last one, I believe, is Turner.
Hi, this is Autumn Turner, also with Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge.
Great. Is there anybody I'm missing? I think that's everybody. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go to the next slide here, the right window. The first thing I wanted to mention just briefly, even though we could probably go on a bit longer with some of the things going on with the Cal Waters. This is the new Division of Water Rights, the database for multiple aspects of water rights records, and particularly for annual reporting is the aspect that touches us the most in this group. as most of you probably already know, that the Cal Water system has been open and accepting reports beginning in October for many folks. And as in terms of the legal delta, ACP and OpenET based reporting, those are pending and should be opening fairly soon here once a couple of last little items get worked out. So one of the things that we've been focusing on lately has been the making sure that agents are assigned to the right water rights. This has been a non-trivial component of changing the entire database to a new system. And that's because under the old reporting, water rights basically were ad hoc, one at a time. Each one had a different password or a reporting identifier record. And now under a more modern user-based approach where a user has certain privileges, the relationships to those water rights may not have been up to date in the legacy ERIM system. So staff were having to manually go in and ensure that any reporting agents are assigned to the water rights that they're responsible for. Now, in some parts of the state where owners might just have a few water rights, that may go more smoothly when they get the PINs, passwords, basically announcement of the opportunity to set up a new user there. In the Delta, though, we have a lot of agents representing the majority of the rights. And so each of these agents may have many dozens or hundreds of rights. And some of those folks are on this call today. So we are working as quick as we can to make sure that those are linked up together. And so stay tuned and let us know, do stay in touch if there are things that are missing that you can't see. So as a part of that process, most users of water rights owners, primary owners or mail receivers have already received what we call the PIN code. And that's to set up a user, basically a secure username attached to your email that you'll set up your own password and have certain rights associated with that. Many of you may already have done that. Anyone can set up an account, though, if you're not a water right owner. And you wouldn't need a PIN if you go initiate this yourself. The PIN is just to connect to water rights that are already associated with that account. And if there are rights that are not appearing as expected or associated as they should be in your view, please do contact Cal Water staff or me, and we'll try to make those connections. So that's been something while the Cal Water's team is working on kind of major database issues as they continue to work with it, that staff, individual staff are trying to make these connections. So do let me know on that. I have just a little bit of time here for Alex Burke to run through just a quick little demo of what the system looks like if you haven't logged in yet, and how that might look for a Delta user. Alex, if you're ready, perhaps you can share your screen.
Yep, switching over. Looking for the right. There we go. All right, can everybody see?
Yes.
All right. So this is the Cal Water's homepage. This is what you see when you first sign in, if you haven't signed in yet. So the way to get to annual reports is you might have to scroll if your screen's smaller, but there's a button here that says My Annual Reports. And then just to clarify, this is the test environment, so I'll be able to see the OpenET type of reporting, and nothing in here that I submit is official. So I've been assigned in the test environment a couple of water rights that belong to the Nature Conservancy, and I'll be demonstrating this one, the SO18537. So click View All Reports, and you can see all of your previous reports. And you could go in and theoretically amend, but I'm going to click on this one that's for 2025 and says not started. Complete now. So this gives you a bit of a preview of the steps you'll go through to submit a report. I'll start at basic information. And so you'll start at the claim type and year. If you want to change your claim type, then you select yes. And it allows you to change your claim types, and you can select multiple of these down here. And then you provide a little justification, but I'm just going to select no for now. Next, you'll see your current statement information. If you need to make changes to your contact or owner information, you'll select yes. And the next page will just provide links to a change of address and change of ownership form. You'll have to do that before you can, and have it approved before you can submit a report. I see a couple mentions in the chat. Are there any questions?
Not yet. I see Amy was just putting a link to the Cal Water's help page and resources.
All right. Yeah, so I'm just gonna select no for now for as far as making changes. And I'm not diverting for cultivation of cannabis. And you'll see I'm the agent down here right now. That's just because I'm in the test environment. So moving on. Here you'll be able to see if, or you'll be able to mark whether you're in compliance with statement terms and conditions. And it provides a link here for you if you want to take a look and check to see if you're in compliance. And if you're not, you'll provide a little justification down here in the box. But we'll select an yes. Here you'll review all the ways you use your beneficial uses. And it's going to have me authenticate. Sometimes it does this. Let me just do that real fast. And it didn't zoom to it. This is because I was testing changing the place of use, and it didn't change it, or I haven't deleted it yet in the test environment. Yeah, so this is the first place you'll be able to check. Luckily, that test one is inactive, so it won't show up in the OpenET poll. But you can check to see that your place of use is correct and your point of diversion is correct. And yeah, you can see all these test polygons. And if you want to add or remove any uses, you'll select yes and make the necessary changes. Select no.
If I may, just a moment, add to this part. Of course, the geospatial aspects of the new system are much advanced over the old ERIMs. And in this particular case, this is a place of use associated with a statement of diversion and use that is in the Delta ACP. So it is using the OpenET based consumptive use estimates. So that's why we have the place of use in here. It's not going to be that way for most of the water rights in Cal Waters until they get places of use developed and checked and so on. I do see that Russ has a hand up.
Yeah, on the authentication page that pops up, is that our password we put in, or is that a special code that we have?
So, have you signed into Cal Waters yet?
Yes.
It had you set up like a multi-factor authentication, right?
Yes.
So it'll have you authenticate that way. So if it's a phone number, it'll send the text to your phone. Yeah.
Thank you.
There may be certain things such as that may work slightly differently in this demo than for public users as well. And that's one of the reasons is this is linking to an ESRI geospatial kind of backend database, and there's a way it transfers between the two. But that's probably a little deep in the weeds. I want to kind of move forward, and I just wanted to do a quick view. We could go all day on this, but I know that a lot of the users here will be doing reports, and so we're available for help as that comes up.
Yeah, and you can submit some beneficial use details. I think all of these have been made optional, so nothing, if you don't want to put any information in there, it won't prevent you from reporting. And then you can describe any changes in this pump or in this box. And then it'll show you the map again with my extra polygon. I don't know why it's showing the whole map. That wasn't happening earlier. Interesting. Well, we'll move on from, oh, there we go. So only this one is active, only the original one. And then this is pulled directly from OpenET. It'll show you the monthly acre feet totals and then the annual total. You can, if you don't agree to use or if you want to report with measured data instead, you'll select no, and it'll take you to the measured data page that everybody else sees. Otherwise, you can agree to use the evapotranspiration data and move on. I saw another mention in the chat here. Looks good. All right. Then you can claim conservation of water. We'll just kind of go through that real fast. And hit no. Can add your comments and upload any documents. Then you can review. Most of this is empty because I didn't change too much. You can review your ET use again. And make sure everything's correct. Then you sign, you hit the checkbox for agreement, sign exactly how it says in the first, middle, and last name. And then you hit submit. and you'll get a number here to track it. But mostly you'll be able to access through that same annual reports page that you clicked on at the beginning, and you can review your report that you just submitted.
Thanks, Alex.
Yep.
So hopefully that demystifies it a little bit for folks who haven't seen it before. A lot of the questions are similar to the older questions in ERIMS, and it's going to have a lot more flexibility in the long term. Maybe a bit of a curve to get up to speed in terms of Delta ACP formerly had a lot of those fields kind of pre-filled and very efficiently put together. We're still investigating the possibility of having some standard language in there, but we're really trying to make sure everybody can move forward. I don't have a lot of time to cover any additional info, but Jay, if you have comments or if there's any brief questions.
do. I just want to point out that this filing basis using OpenET and as an index for consumptive use is really the outcome of the success of the Delta Alternative Compliance Plan in achieving 98% reporting in the last 2 years, as well as the validity, accuracy, ease of use, transparency, and ability to look at the data and to see this mosaic of 3,000 rights across the Delta, all mapped and aligned to a place of use, aligned with a point of diversion. And so I just want to acknowledge the involvement of this group for 7+ years in this journey, as well as the leadership of Central Delta Water Agency, Brett in particular, and Dan Jr. and South Delta as well, in terms of giving us both the intellectual capital as well as the funding to do this organically and demonstrate that it can work and is a and that OpenET just is an increasingly accurate, beneficial, and great partner to work with in terms of further refining issues on open water ET and other explorations that we were ongoing and involvement with them. And so I just want to acknowledge that the ability to file this way is only a product for the legal Delta filing community. And it is, fundamentally grounded on the experience that we have been able to demonstrate in reporting over the last 2 water years. And so I just want to acknowledge that, that the thought leadership of this group and Central Delta Water Agency and South Delta, and really kind of giving us an ability to bring this platform online in Cal Waters, which I just felt was essential based on the track record of success that we developed. And so I'm going to be the first to say, and I think Will's already acknowledged it, that we're going to have transition year challenges. We're still trying to align the portfolio of reports that along with agents and owners to accurately reflect the rights that you all have traditionally reported on and reported out on. And so I just want to acknowledge again that it's really the thought leadership of the Delta Measurement Experimental Consortium and the Central and South Delta Water Agencies that really help bring this platform for filing to fruition as a built-in feature within Cal Waters. And so I just again want to express my appreciation, Brett, to you all for shouldering into this and helping us bring something online. And and this is going to be a transition year. It's not going to we are, as Will noted, the team's really working full time now to align that portfolio of rights to with agents and owners. So we appreciate your forbearance with us and all of that, but just also want to acknowledge the thoughtful work of this group and others in bringing this platform forward for filing.
Thanks, Jay. Any other very brief questions for the good of the order before we move on? Not seeing any. Feel free to contact us or the Cal Waters Help team.
I do have a question. This is Mark Ackerman. So are we reporting using eRIMS this for last year, or are we moving to Cal Waters?
Everything will be in Cal Waters. eRIMS has been deprecated and is now in a read-only mode. It's still accessible to look at old information. However, nothing has been updated since June. All of the new water reports will be in the new system. And so if you have received a notification from the Division of Water Rights, it may include a PIN number to access the rights that may be attached to your information. If you have not, you can sign in and log in and sign up for a profile, and do contact us or the Cal Waters Help team to make sure that you have access to the rights that you believe you need to report for. And so we're being fairly liberal in terms of agency for folks who are making reports that there's a lot of trust. We're basically assuming that nobody's logging in to make false reports, and we'll be able to fix anything like that. Certainly, we're not expecting. But if you have an agent, obviously, if you're involved with an agency or there's certain rights that may be attached to another contact name, just do let us know, and we can make sure that we connect those up.
Okay, thank you.
And that's, for the number of water users in the state, this is a big startup for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for understanding.
Just one other question. We have approximately 18 water rights out here. Would they all go on to one account as opposed to having to go through them one at a time?
Yes. So that's one of the advantages of the new system. I think there are probably Cal Water staff who could answer this question a little bit better, but there is a difference between individuals and organizations. So as an organization, you may have multiple staff who need access to view and perform any actions related to that. So that would probably be the recommended way to do it. But most likely under the same owner name, those should be attached to the same contact person. And I can look into yours in particular and follow up after to see what it looks like. But typically you'll set up your user as an organization. And that's a topic of some of the Cal Waters workshops and outreach that they've been kind of mentioning, that stuff that's a little more specific for those staff. Does that help?
Yes, that does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your interest. All right. Now back to the presentation here. Okay, moving on to the other topic that we have today, which is the revised SB 88 water measurement regulations. So the State Water Board, Division of Water Rights, has been in the process of updating the original SB 88 regulations that were promulgated in 2016, requiring water measurement. And out of this came a lot of the discussion in this group and the alternative compliance plans. And so a revised version of this, many of you probably already know, was adopted by the board in August of this year. After it was adopted, the Office of Administrative Law has made note of a few changes before it's accepted officially as a regulation in the California Code of Regulations. So there have been various comment periods on that. Fairly minor revisions to that, but it does set back the proposed timelines in the revision to apply for a later water year, as I'll show in just a moment. So it did restructure and clarify quite a bit the intent and details of intended water measurement requirements, similar to the old ones, but there are some changes. So I encourage all to review those. One of the things that we'd like to address today is the regulatory requirements for large diversions, and address how those might be incorporated into alternative compliance plans. So for large diversions, it is specified the definition of a large diversion is a point of diversion that can divert over 30 CFS or 10,000 acre feet per year. And that can be shared, or it could be a maximum of if the face value is greater than 10,000, or the max rate of diversion is greater than 30 CFS. So there's various combinations of that. If you have a lot of water rights through one diversion, if there are a bunch of small rights, if it's the combined total is greater than 30 CFS, that would apply. I encourage folks to read the regs on that. Required measurement frequency for large diversions would be daily or more, between 200 and 999, and hourly or more frequent for greater than 1,000 acre feet per acre. And so basically all of the large diversions would fall under that category of hourly or more frequently. And the third and formerly known as the telemetry requirement, although that word is not used anymore, is submission of data to the state water. The older regs had a requirement to post to a publicly accessible website on a weekly basis. And again, for larger diversions, there would be hourly data. Excuse me, the old version had daily data that was on a weekly basis for many rights. But the new requirement is to submit those to the State Water Board, either through Cal Waters or on an approved website, which may be the CDEC site or some other site that's approved by the Deputy Director of Water Rights. And so these will take in effect for water year 2027. So submissions could be accomplished under the old regs, the old requirements, up to next October under those requirements. And then consideration of many of the new requirements, which I'm not going to cover here, would be required on the later timeline. So the existing regulations are still in effect, requiring measurements. These, there's been variable responses to that. Obviously, the alternative compliance programs and plans that we have here are a response to some of that in terms of ways to institute technically and economically feasible consideration of measurement requirements. But the new regs are a new frame and a new timeline to accomplish some of these things. And there is a requirement to update the alternative compliance plans to adhere to the new regulations. And for that, I think is going to be some adjustment in terms of incorporating what may be large diversion issues. So just a few of the things. This really mentions how the timeline changed from the original proposed amendments to what is going to be the new revisions. Is the timeline again for water year 2027 and updating the ACPs.
Well, if I might, I just want to jump in a bit here. We have begun conversations with a few of the large diverter entities around the Delta. I think as we approach this, we really want to hear from you. I think our hypothesis is that this is going to look different on an in situ basis at different places around the Delta. consistent with different methodologies for diverting and routing water supply, and so I think we don't really begin this with a preconceived notion, and other than candidly, we think that we're looking at, just based on a handful of discussions with major diverters so far, that we're looking at different types of methodologies to comply with the large diverter requirement, and intend to look at that issue really through the lens that this group has pioneered, which is what is the best pathway, most feasible on a cost basis to deliver the best data that we can, consistent with the requirements of the reg. So I just want to caveat that, I think it's prudent that we have a bit of time to work to figure out and align the best methodologies with specific diversion techniques and delivery processes. And so we'll look forward to working with uh, uh, the Delta diverter comes best, and again, in different places around the Delta.
Thanks, Jay. I don't know if anyone else had, your audio was breaking up a little bit at the end there. I think we'll be able to get back to that just momentarily. This is just the final slide to frame the discussion. There's, out of the 3,000 water rights or so in the Delta, we've got about 83 that we've identified, and this is from the legacy ERIMS POD data set that qualify for this. About a third of the Delta water use is covered by these larger diversions. Of course, there are many smaller diversions that account for a lot of the, smaller statements of diversion in use, siphons, et cetera. Places where there's many siphons in use might not qualify. So we are undertaking a review of the legacy records and any information that we have about the PODs, just to make sure that we fully understand what's going on. We may have to reach out to some folks to clarify the data that we have. For example, there may be a water user with a very large portfolio of rights and one diversion that's 160 CFS, for example. But for some reason that may be in a lot of water rights records showing that diversion amount. Just trying to identify physically what we have on the ground and what kind of systems that we have. I haven't mentioned here yet, but one of the requirements of the regs is a map and a detailed description of conveyance and diversion. So that's going to be incredibly helpful for us as we review these and in the new system, and to have basically an engineer's map of the conveyance systems, the drainage systems, diversion pumps, drainage pumps, especially in the Delta, and how those are operating. So that's another aspect of this, but mainly focusing here on, how for the Office of the Delta Water Master do we address large diversions as an aspect of, compliance or alternative compliance. So as Jay noted, welcoming input here and suggestions and building discussions and relationships moving forward. Any questions or comments on that? I know we've got a lot on our agenda that we can move forward with, but well, hearing none. Any additional framing that we should include there, Jay, before we transition? I think you're muted now.
Yep. I think we've covered it. I mean, I honestly feel like this is going to be an ongoing topic of the DMEC rolling forward over the next couple of years here. So I think a couple of the experiments we're going to talk about actually kind of inform different approaches to this as well. So happy to move on if we don't have questions today. I think, again, this will be a consistent work area for the DMEC for the next couple of years.
Okay, great. I believe our next topic is updates of measurement projects and experiments. First, we have Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Russ?
Yes, thanks, Will. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So this effort is titled the Water Balance Study or Pilot Project, which I've presented at previous meetings, which I showed maps and where we are at that point. I'm happy to report that we've got the first phase, which is called the low density sensors. There's 5 locations on Bolden Island. We're using Bolden Island as that study site, and we've got sensors that we'll put in 5 different locations. We'll look at existing data and as it applies to the model elements that we're developing. Basically, it's any of the elements that contribute to water on versus any elements that contribute to water off, and then comparing that data in a model set. And it's basically is to set up the framework to see, answer the question of what we've coined in the past as net channel depletion. And so basically, if there's water going into the channel, or is it being consumed enough in those different studies? As you know, the Delta is got such a variation of subsidence in it, and Bolden Island is one of the deeply subsided. So as you move to areas that are not as subsided, those elements and the influence of those elements could change, like, for example, seepage. But in any case, we have purchased and have had all the instrumentation delivered to our consultant. And we had a meeting out in the field to go through to take a look at. And Jay, I really and Will really appreciate you guys showing and bringing your staff, because it was a good presentation of a number of folks that came out. I was pleasantly surprised, and as you guys know, I'm not bashful to talk. So out there, I got a lot of wind out there with the winds. But in any case, we were able to go around Bolden and look at the 5 different locations, have a little bit of some discussion on what is this model going to do, guys? What is it measuring? One case in point is discharge. So just so you know, we have a setback levee on the west side of Bolden, which is our major pump station on that side of 2. We have 2. And in that design of the pump station replacement, we're going to put meters on the discharge pipes, and MBK has looked at it, and the magnometer style of meters are going to be installed on those discharge pipes, and we're looking at construction. Fingers crossed, everything goes well. By this summer coming up, we'll start construction of that. So we'll be able to really do that. In the meantime, we're using strap-on meters to take a look at some of the data, as well as look at power reports too. And with our pumps, we have our pumps tested out for its efficiencies. And so we're able to basically do a linear calculation on that with the horsepower and the efficiency. So with that, again, we have MBK is going to be installing them. So we've got a couple meetings to go through with that. I am also happy to report that on November 3rd, we met with a small group to look at the modeling. Basically, how do we approach this model? We want to look at, we don't want to trip over ourselves if there's old modeling. For example, we found that HydroFocus has a groundwater model that they did for several locations throughout the Delta, but Bolden being one of them. So we're taking a look at that and its applicability to this model that we're presenting. We also talked about other model elements and assumptions, and I think we have a really good team modelers. I've got Steve Miko here in my office at Met, who's done a lot of modeling and with his oversight of what Tetra Tech is producing, and Tetra Tech has a modeler within their organization. And I'm also talking to Paul Hutton. It used to be worked for Tetra Tech. Now he works for DWR. And so I'm going to have some conversations with him because he's got a lot of wealth of knowledge. So basically, we're taking all that literature, all that data that we already know. Some has been collected through eddy covariant flux towers, for example, that go into the model. Precipitation is a good example of that, real easy. But also I call it an eddy covariant station plus, because then they put probes in the soil to measure moisture and temperatures and things like that. That could be important to the model. And so now we're embarking on installing the instrumentation. So over the next 30 days, 60 days, we'll be installing that, given that we're in the winter months and, we've had some pretty good rains. So we have to coordinate that. And then our next modeling meeting, which I'm going to look to set up for mid-December to continue the conversation on the model inputs, the model elements, and then basically, start to work on the data that can fit into the model. And then we'll have various meetings, I'm thinking on a monthly basis, just to kind of update where we are on the model. And then Jay, you and I have talked about some other things that could benefit for water conservation. And I just want to let you know that I'm setting up that meeting and we'll have that conversation, because I know you were pretty excited about it. I was pretty excited. You were excited. So both of us excitement together, we're going to get some good things done. With that, I think that is as much as I have for this part of the meeting. Thank you. Any questions?
Russ, I think you're setting up a separate website on the project too, right?
Yeah.
Is that accessible at this point? Could you put a link to that in? Is it?
Yeah. Let me tell you about my system. So I had an issue. My company's converting to the newest operating system, and for some reason, I'm one of a handful of computers that can't, or accounts that are having problems with that. So I'm working through that. So I'm expecting. We worked through it last week. You can't imagine the time that I've been spending on it with our IT guys, and I have a full respect for these IT guys, man. They're amazing. But we're working through some of the bandwidth as well as storage capacity on my system, and so I'm thinking. They told me that, in fact, I just saw an email come in that they're rolling it out today and tomorrow on my system. So, answer your question. Long story short, next week I'm thinking I'll be able to provide that link.
Great. Yeah, looking forward to it, because that's also a good way for people that are in this process to engage with you all and stay current on on a monthly basis. So appreciate that.
Not only that, it also helps because I dropped in the historic documents. So as we talked about 3-4 years ago, Tetra Tech did a report on what modeling Bolden Island would look like. Before they looked at modeling both Bolden and Bacon, then we just said, well, let's just start on Bolden first, and then we can expand it later.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for that, and thanks for your kind of the open invitation to this group to kind of engage with you in this. So it's just, again, I think it's a great learning lab for all of us to.
I jokingly say it this way, Jay. I'd rather have the questions now than the questions from an attorney later. That way we can work through them. So we're happy to be totally open and transparent.
Right.
Russ, who's running your eddy covariance station?
We have Berkeley and Davis. They've been up and running for the last 8 years.
Okay.
There's a lot of data, and we're going to get that data and synthesize it and take a look at it and see how it applies. But yeah, we have two different fields: a traditionally corn farmed field and a alfalfa farm field on Bolden.
Nice. Thanks for coining Edicovariance Plus.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to see that stuff out there. So thank you.
I agree.
Any other questions for Russ? I just wanted to ask, just because we haven't mentioned it here today, I understand that Metropolitan has the majority of these siphons measured, correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was going to wait if there was a place to report that, but we have, what's funny about this? Can you guys guess how many meters we have to install? 88. What's the Senate bill or the Assembly bill? 88. Anyway, we've got Bolden Island and Web Track fully metered. So now we can embark, Jay and Will, onto the annual data set, looking at it from an annual time step, for example. We have 25 meters that right now we issued a contract in early November to successful same installer for Bacon and Holland Track. The nice thing is all the meters were stored on Bacon, so they don't have to go far for Bacon. It's right there. So it should go along. So what I'm anticipating is these will be installed by the end of the year. Oh, and the other thing I'll add to it, one of the things that always pops up is maintenance fees, and so we're keeping track. We're charge coding the work that goes into upgrades. Let's say if we have a battery that goes out, we're tracking that. We have solar panels that are not working, or we have wiring systems, say a rat goes and chews through it. So we're monitoring all that so that we can calculate an annual maintenance, just so people will know. Again, open and transparent. And this may or may not inform folks in what direction. Now, I totally understand the open ET, Jay, and all that. I'm going off of what my management wanted to do 4 or 5 years ago when this bill became a deal that we have to deal with. But we will know what that maintenance fee, and if folks don't remember, our consultant made an estimate before, roughly about 170,000 to 200,000 a year to maintain the 4 islands. Just it gives you kind of perspective, and we will update that so that folks know if they want to put a meter on what they're getting into.
Great. So those, just to clarify, and maybe I don't know if you have this handy, but ballpark. So that's just the maintenance per year for 85 meters. What would be the capital cost to install?
So to purchase and install, anywhere from 10,000 to 25,000 per meter, depending on the size. When you get to the 24-inch diameter meters, then that price jumps a lot. And we have a handful of 24-inch diameter meters or siphons.
Thank you. That's very helpful and informative. Did I see, it looked like George had his hand up?
Yep.
My friend George, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Been a while.
I've got a couple of things. Number one, how are you coming with measuring return flows?
The discharge pipes, it kind of briefly went over that. So there's two ways to do it. You can use the power records as one way, and the other way is to put a strap-on meter. And then the third way is we're installing meters discharge on the discharge pipes. The other thing is more of an input, which is your seepage. That's the toughest one to calculate. So that's what we're working with, the various different models for ModFlow and some of the other groundwater type models.
Okay, so for people who don't know, who are maybe new to this process, until you calculate return flows from deeper delta islands back into the system, you really don't know the net usage of agricultural lands in the delta. You really don't have a clue. And I say that because we've done it twice on McDonald Island using one of the methods that Russ described, which is an energy calculation. We spend $1 million a year on electricity to operate drainage pumps to return excess water to the system. And we do that to keep McDonald Island from flooding. If we didn't do it, it would flood. And you'd lose a hell of a lot more water from open water and vegetation. So it's great to know one with more precision, one of the input numbers to determine net usage. But until you know what's being pumped back into the system, you really don't have a usable statistic, because the gross amount has nothing to do with the deeper delta. The water that's pumped out consists of drainage tailwater, meaning excess water that was diverted for crops but is not needed. It's pumped back out. But it also includes seepage water and water from underground springs, as well as rainfall. So the net agricultural usage is a much more relevant and probably the only relevant statistic as far as the deeper tidal delta is concerned. And I keep bringing that up because I don't want anyone to lose sight of it. So that's point one. And I know Russ is working on getting to a measured drainage value. So that's one thing. The other is, it's been known for a long time by thousands of studies and DWR stuff, and that weeds use more water than irrigated crops. So does open water. And the difference is quite significant. And so what I want to know is, what is the point of developing a system to measure agricultural usage of water in the Delta when we know that open water and riparian vegetation uses a lot more water through evapotranspiration than crops use? I don't quite get the point. I don't understand the ultimate goal of coming up with an accurate number for agricultural usage. Because to me, it saves water. If you just let the land go and get covered with weeds, or you let islands flood, you're going to lose a lot more water. So I'm throwing that out because I've been part of this process from the beginning, and I've continually tried to make that point. But we keep going on, and new things get done, and et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like to understand why we're doing it. So that's sort of a general question for you, Jay.
Sure. I appreciate that, George. I think the way I'd answer that is, I think, consistent with the charter of this group, that the more data that we develop and the better refinement we get on that data from different angles is contributes to a deeper understanding and gets us closer to a deeper understanding of real-time water use in less than normal water year types. And I just think that we we have taken your charge and charter to really better define and reduce the error bars in understanding open water ET. And I know the open ET group is pretty excited about some of the tools that they've been developing and refining, and in being able to apply that to open water calculation and really get that error, kind of that 20 or 2 years ago was a 20% variance factor, down to a 10% variance factor, and just being able to drill in on that, George. So I think honestly, we want to look at this from different perspectives and develop better data and to advance a common understanding of sort of real-time water budget dynamics in the Delta. And so I think what we're doing is fully consistent with the charter of this group, and trying to look at this through through different lenses, and uh, perfecting how we consistently get better data.
Okay,
The other thing I would add too, George, is that um, we this is doing a lot to, but I do agree with Jay that the better place to be is more on a real time basis. It helps for decisions that need to be made in certain water year types, like dry years and drought years, for example. But even if the answer is different than what we hypothesized, that's good information to know. That way you have an answer, and then you can direct those energies accordingly to what makes sense to accomplish the overall mission, and that is understanding the flow data as it moves through the delta, as well as being able to have it on a real-time basis. I think is very valuable.
That's great. That's great as long as you're calculating return flows so that you have a true.
I agree with you.
Right.
True, I know you do, and
yeah,
and my other point is, and it's sort of been touched on but not really expanded, and that is when you're talking about water years where you've got drought or whatever, and you're looking at ways to curtail or save water or whatever. The fact that weeds and open water use more water than irrigated crops is a huge factor in that. Because if you curtail farmers and they don't plant crops and they don't have the money to dewater the islands, and they don't have the money to go out and remove all the weeds, you're going to end up losing more water than you think you're saving. And I just don't want to lose sight of that. So when it comes down to deciding how you're going to reallocate water or apportion water or whatever, the hard reality is that weeds use more water than crops. And so once you know the net usage after you subtract return flows, then maybe you would say in the deeper delta, well, we shouldn't really curtail those farmers because we're going to lose more water than we gain. So that has to be part of the equation too.
Thanks, George.
Yeah.
I'm hearing the concerns about curtailment and
Yeah.
also, the your arguments are fairly persuasive. So we will see a presentation coming up on measuring return flow, and we're very interested in both the costs, the effectiveness of using energy records potentially to account for some of the volumes there. Absolutely agree with you on knowing the net and getting that is something that we need to know. I saw that Greg Gartrell has his hand up. I'd like to hear some thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. I just like to add that there are some things that are important in managing the delta. One of them is knowing what the delta outflow is. Right now, we pretend we know it.
Right.
The delta consumptive use, or actually the delta channel depletion data that is used on a daily basis by DWR and Bureau of Reclamation. Those data were developed in the 1960s based on 1950s and 1960s crop patterns. We know they're not right, but that's what they're using. But those data are important because they have standards that dictate the amount, the outflow on a daily basis throughout the year, and salinity. And that affects Delta farmers if they get that wrong, and the Delta is in fact saltier than it should have been. That's going to affect your crops. I don't think anybody is questioning whether or not if the island's flooded and we left them flooded, that would be taking a lot more water than the crops do now. That's a reason not to leave them flooded, along with the fact that if they flooded and they stayed flooded, they'd be wonderful habitat for HABs, which nobody wants. Although there is a myth that if we flood it, the delta is going to get saltier. That depends entirely on what areas flood. The Western Delta, yeah, that's true. If those areas flood and stay flooded, the delta will get saltier. If areas in the east and the north and south flood, it'll get fresher. But it'll also be full of HABs. None of those are good things. But knowing what those trade-offs are is important. And it is correct that we can't do this just measuring what's going through siphons or just measuring what the ET is. You have to know what's coming in and out of the soil. You have to know what is going back and getting pumped off. And those are all important factors that figure into everything that needs to be considered when trying to manage this system. And it's the same thing upstream. I can't think of any water user that consumes 100% of their water, except the exporters take it out of the area. Some of that comes back down to San Joaquin with a lot of salt that goes completely out of the valley. Yeah, that's consumed, but it's still, when it's consumed down in Southern California, it goes outfalls. And knowing what all those things are terribly important. You need a complete water balance, and you won't get it by not measuring anything.
Let me respond to you. When you use the word net channel depletion, in the tidal delta, there's no such thing.
Yes, there is.
Well, you tell me how that works.
Are the net of what seeps onto the islands, plus what's siphoned onto the islands or pumped on the islands, plus what goes back into the delta. That's the net of what comes out of the delta. And that determines how much water goes out of the delta that repels salinity. And it's part of the mass balance that's required.
Yeah, you and I have had this conversation before, but the point I want to make is that twice a day the tide fills the delta. So the problem for us is never quantity. There is no depletion in the sense of lowering water levels, because the tidal inflows take care of that. The problem is salinity. So that's the real big problem.
There's a depletion of the fresh water coming in, and that determines what the outflow is, and that offsets the tidal dispersion that comes in on the tides. It's as simple as that. It's simple physics. We understand this very well. There's no sense arguing about it.
Well, I think there's sense in arguing about it, but I'll accept what you're saying. I would tend to phrase it more in terms of water quality, because salty water is no good for farming or anything else, except maybe saltwater fish. And I don't know if you can, in your application of physics, how you distinguish molecules of water that gets absorbed into the land. But as far as I know, the water in the delta is a combination of not just river flows from the north. It's like a big mixing bowl. So maybe you're right, but whatever, I think the point is salinity is a problem. And it's a problem for exporters, and it's a problem for farmers. And so we do need flows through the delta. And so I guess we'll just keep talking about it.
Yep. Appreciate it. It's certainly, not that this issue isn't going away. And again, I think our answers are informed by continually having better data. I see, Brett, you had your hand up, and I do want to just make sure we're giving time to Kasana and the TNC folks to give us a report today too.
I'll do my best to be brief. Just wanted to touch on a few things that Greg mentioned there. Yeah, I mean, on paper and a calculation, if we knew the amount of water coming in at downstream, I guess you'd call it, on the channel, there are other unknowns in the delta, such as artesian accretions to the channel and flows and things of that nature. So, I mean, yeah, other than consumptive use, I don't really know what the depletion from the channel is. There could be some argument about temporal aspects of that. But the other thing I wanted to touch on was that Greg also said that nobody argues that open water or tidal habitat consumes more water than, say, farming. And if we look at Will's map that he put up at the beginning, I think there were some sections of what is reclaimed Delta farmland in the middle of Roberts Island and things of that nature that had around an acre foot or less than an acre foot or an acre foot and a half of consumption per acre. And as we go further into the business of restoring habitat in the Delta or de-reclaiming islands or taking down levees and exposing that land to tidal action and the bypass and such, I think it would behoove us as a DMEC to endeavor to make an effort to quantify those additional water costs of those restored areas. I'm talking things like cutoff slough or lookout slough, sorry, lookout slough and things of that nature. Right? I think that is something that's missing from the larger conversation as land use in the Delta changes in that respect. When we do reconnect those lands with that tidal action, and there is, I would say, a significant, I don't know that nobody would argue with me about that, Greg, but I'm sure there's somebody that would want to take up that argument but there is a lot more consumed water, regardless of what the quality is, I guess, in those areas. So I think as we look at the delta, the legal delta as a hydrologic unit, we should be paying attention to that going forward. And I think maybe even as a group try to tackle that issue or that question and see what the increased consumptive use in the delta is based on those restored areas.
I would agree with that completely. That's something that's often overlooked. There's often a pretense that, well, it's restoring habitat, therefore there can be nothing wrong with it, and that is something that is worth looking at and quantifying.
Thanks all. Very helpful discussion there. I think I would love to add and continue that one, and I'm sure I will with folks individually. I think it's best that we move on to the next presentation, which is the Nature Conservancy.
Hi, all. Kirk Klosmeyer at the Nature Conservancy, and yeah, very, very good tee up to our presentation today. I'll start sharing my screen. And yeah, we're talking about our efforts to monitor tailwater pump volume. And this, we made some good progress. So I'm excited to share some actual data today. But as always, I feel like a bit of a detective trying to figure out what actually is going on here as I look at the numbers coming out of these meters. So I'm going to talk through kind of the value of multiple lines of evidence when trying to understand flows or volumes coming out of these tailwater pumps. So just a really quick, simple, we were talking a lot about water budgets. So here's just kind of an example from Staten. We've got water coming in through multiple siphons all around the exterior of the island, the perimeter of the island. That's the blue. And then we got a little bit of water coming in from sort of direct rainfall falling on the island. So that's kind of your water in, plus any seepage that's coming through the levees or up from the groundwater. And then water out. At Staten, we've got two main tailwater pump stations, the east pumps, which is this one down here, and then the south pumps, which is all the way at the south end of the island. That's sort of actual physical water being pumped out, then you lose water through evapotranspiration, and then any seepage going back out of the island. So just to kind of break that down, and again, this is not comprehensive. Russ has been working on a better equation here. I'm just kind of doing a simplistic version here. And we have a pretty good sense, I think, of ET estimates, pretty good sense of rain. Siphons is challenging, unless you're Russ. For the rest of us, it's been very hard to get every siphon measured. But if we have a better sense of this, tailwater pumps, you got power, you've got 2 locations versus 50. I think that's a a better way to try to back calculate the amount you're diverting directly from the water. And then the big question marks are the seepage in and out, how that changes over time. But one step at a time here is the way I want to take it. So I'm going to focus on tailwater pump measurement. And I'm just going to go through, I've got 5 lines of evidence here. So the first are these pump tests. This is what George was talking about, where you hire someone to come out, they measure the flow and the energy used, and they generate reports for you. And we had this done in 2022. Maybe we have some more recent ones. I haven't double checked, but the ones I have are from 2022. And this just gives you a sense. We've got the 2 pump stations, east pumps and south pumps. We have 4 pumps at each of these stations. At east pump, it's diesel generator pump. It's kind of a backup in case you lose power. And then I'm not sure why they didn't run pump 3 here. Maybe there was something wrong with the pump. But anyway, here's the data I have, and you can see they estimate the CFS, cubic feet per second, for these pumps. You can do this in acre feet per day or acre feet per hour. I'm just going to stick with CFS for right now. So that is about 30 for the first 2 pumps. Pump 4 is about 20. Pump 1 is 17. Pump 2, I think this one is on a larger diameter pipe, so that's why you get a little bit more water through that one. And then pump 4. So a good amount of variability between between these. You could kind of estimate, I don't know, 20, 25 CFS per pump if you wanted to just take one simple number and didn't have this data. But that's kind of roughly the range of data we're seeing. The next line of evidence, so this is great for instantaneous read, but it doesn't tell you when the pumps turn on and off. And we know they don't run all the time. They run sometimes, and sometimes they're off. So our PG&E energy usage is another good line of evidence on sort of when these pumps are running. And through the pump test, you also get those cubic feet per kilowatt hour. So it's sort of a volume per energy metric. And so you can take these kilowatt hours and multiply it by that factor to get that linear estimate that Russ and Greg were talking about. Here we've got a day. This is from 2024, and you got about 20 kilowatt hours, kind of 1 pump running consistently. Then it steps up and steps up again. So that's probably 3 pumps running through most of the day hours here, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then it steps down again to the evening where probably 2 pumps are running. So, you get a good sense of multiple pumps based on the energy usage. This is much better for a pretty high quality data set on when it turns on and off, but you don't necessarily know which pump in our case, because we only have 1 meter per pump station. So 1 meter going to 3 or 4 pumps. And so you have to kind of figure that out. So then we wanted to get a little bit more detail and actually physically measure what's happening in these pipes. So our next line of evidence are these pressure transducers. I really like these because they're pretty consistent. They're pretty simple. They do get gummed up with gunk in there, and the little diaphragms start to kind of give way over a couple years, but they're pretty cheap, $100 each, and you can often connect them to the same data logger telemetry device, and they tend to you can measure increased look at PSI, pounds per square inch, increased pressure as the pumps are running. As you can imagine, this is on the lower part of the pipe. You got to increase the pressure to push the water up and over the levee. So this is increased pressure while the pump's running. And so each one of these peaks represents a period that the pump was running, and then it drops down to kind of a baseline level around sort of atmospheric pressure when the pumps aren't running. We get some outliers here. Here's a negative 2.5. I don't know what happened there. But one thing to note is to be sure any pressure transducers you install can withstand kind of negative pressure, negative less than atmospheric pressure. We installed some that couldn't, and as soon as it went negative, it blew out the sensor and broke them. So this is kind of like as the water's sucking back out, maybe you're getting this siphon effect, and you get this negative pressure. So it could be an outlier, it could be a valid reading, but you just want to make sure your pressure transducers are robust. The next line of evidence, we can start to stack these here. So we actually have some micrometer single point insertion mag meters that we have stuck into the pipes. Put a hole in the pipe, stick this thing in there. I don't know how far it sticks in, but I think it's a good foot or so into the flow of water, which could act as a barrier to flow and cause clogs, but we're talking pretty wide diameter. I think these are 30 or 36-inch pipes, so good amount of room to flow around that as well. And with that, you get estimates of flow. So here you can see on this chart, we've got feet cubed per second or cubic feet per second. And this is just one day, September 20th. And you can see the pump kind of switching on and off as the levels in the tailwater pond go up and down. And the max reading here is about 23 CFS, and sometimes it's a little bit lower, 17 or 18 cubic feet per second. So, but the main thing I like to see here is two lines of evidence, pretty independent, a meter and a pressure transducer, and they're both aligned in terms of the timing when it clicked on and when it clicked off. So this makes me happy. We even have a fifth line of evidence here. Oh, and last thing, yeah, it was 23 to 16 to 23. So kind of in the same order of magnitude from what we got from the pump tests of 29 for this East Pump 1. So again, a little bit less, but it's kind of what you might expect. But if you just took that one number, 29, and multiplied it by the amount of the power usage, you might be overestimating flow. In this case, you would, because it was always below that 29 number from this measurement, if we trust this measurement, which I'll give you evidence that maybe we shouldn't. But anyway, so this is good in terms of timing. And then here we even put a pressure level meter, again, another pressure transducer in the pipe in the tailwater pond itself. And so now we're kind of looking at the level of the water in the pond. As you got extra irrigation water flowing into the pond, the level goes up, the pump switch on, the level goes down. The irrigation water drains in, it goes up, the pump switch on, it goes back down. So this sawtooth pattern, very consistent with what we'd expect given the pumps clicking on and off throughout the day. It hits some height of about 63 inches or something, and that triggers the pump to turn on. It pulls it back down, pumps click off at another height, and then we start again. So this is, again, all kind of like the good side of the data. Makes me happy. I'll quickly go to why we don't yet have a good sort of full water budget and estimate of water pumped off. Because when I looked at pump number 2, I saw pretty good alignment between when the flow meter was running, which is kind of this orange color, and then when the pressure transducer, this red line, it drops down, the pump is off, it comes back up, the pump is on. However, the values are weird. They have this stair-step pattern, which I don't love. And then just the total magnitude here is we're talking ranging between 1 and 4 cubic feet per second. So remember, pump 2 is almost the same as pump 1. It's the same setup. Should be about 29 cubic feet per second, and we're measuring 3 and 2 when it's running. So this makes me very suspicious of these data. I'm kind of investigating, and I see an issue here. And I don't want to just take, okay, this is what we measured as terms of flow from pump 2, because I think could be off by an order of magnitude. So we need to check the calibration, check the settings on the meter, make sure there's no clogs in the pipe. So we need to do a little more maintenance, physical maintenance, in order to figure out what's going on here. Similar issue on pump number 3. This is one that only triggers with the diesel pump. And, good to have that pressure transducer data that's showing these spikes. The flow meter is also showing spikes during those same times. I'd love to see that. But this 3 to 5 CFS seems low. 3 to 8 CFS seems low. So I also want to double check this one just to make sure we got the settings on that meter correct. Finally, here's the real bad actor here. Pump 4, we're getting really bad alignment between the pressure transducer, the line, when the pump meter is registering numbers. So I expect anytime there's kind of these little mountain patterns that there should also be green area here, but for some reason it stopped measuring flow even though there's high pressure still in that pipe, and it kind of happens inconsistently, and you get these spikes. And then the other problem here is cubic feet per second ranging from 10 to 190 cubic feet per second, which is, again, an order of magnitude too large now. This pump should be more like 19 CFS based on the pump test. So again, the importance of having multiple lines of evidence to really investigate these data and try to figure out, is it a problem with an actual physical problem where the pump is getting clogged, or there's an issue there, or is it a measurement problem, and just trying to uncover those issues. So to close, this is kind of how I feel when I look at the total values coming off of these meters right now. Good start, but I don't believe the results quite yet. And we're going to keep working on that in the days to come.
And in terms of tailwater pumping, Kirk, you all are going to keep this experiment going through the winter, right? When you're great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that'll be a real test.
Caught a good amount of the irrigation season this summer, and we'll keep it running through the winter as we do some habitat flooding, and then also just picking up rainstorms.
Great.
Terrific presentation, Kirk. I love to see plotted data, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate your transparency.
See, Russ has his hand up too.
Yeah, Kirk, just this good information. Be great to be able to compare what we're doing to what you're doing. On your graphs, do you have, because you have your pump on float set at a certain elevation where it pumps on, or automatically turns on, right? Be nice to show that on your graph in comparison. Okay. That'll give a good reference point to up and down, on and off.
Right. So like with the pond height, when does it click on and when does it click off? Yeah. It gets a little confusing when you've got all 3 or 4 pumps running at the same time. It's like,
But the value is your head,
yeah,
the difference in your head, I think, because it may vary pond to pond.
yeah,
So, yeah, and that what I'm getting at is your infiltration flow of your seepage. How fast is that moving through your system might dictate the frequency on and off based on that head that it's pushing against.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you could even see the tidal prism in the pressure transducer data because the head's changing on the river side as the tides go up and
Yes.
down.
Yeah,
So
and that's another good analysis to take a look at too, because that
yeah,
could have some influence because you're so close to it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thanks. Good work though. I'm looking forward to see if you get convinced or not.
Right, me too.
I see Kelsey
Kelsey,
has
let's
the
go to
hand up.
you. Yeah, and then let's get to Kosan. I'm just cognizant that we're at time here almost.
Hi, great presentation, Kirk. I was wondering, do you guys still have plans to do the flange mag meters? Sorry if you already answered that question.
For the tailwater pipes or for the siphons?
I believe it was the tailwater pipes that you guys were talking about flange mag meters, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I think we had a couple different kind of like ideas of what to do, and options are always open if we do have kind of continued trouble with the insertion mag meters. Just the size of these, the diameter of these pipes is big. It just gets more complicated, and as Russ was talking about, more expensive with
Right.
those flange mag meters at the really big size.
Okay, got it. And then the other thing I was going to say is for, I believe it was pump 2 and 3, the issues where um, it's showing the data, the CFS much lower than it should be. We have seen issues like that with the MET meters, and we have found that there's an issue with the pulse factor. And so I recommend potentially taking a look at that.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just one setting on that device and it's like, okay, now
Yeah.
let's change it.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah,
the
but
good kind of problem.
great presentation.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the questions. Looking forward to more to come on that. So as Jay said, moving right along, Kosana, I'd like to share your screen.
Thank you. How much do I have? 6 minutes? 5?
I'm a little unclear whether we're going to 45 or the hour
Yeah.
myself.
I assume that we're alive until the hour, so let's assume that way and kind of just go forward. I think there will be a lot of interest in your discussion, so thank you.
Awesome. Can you see my screen? Great. This is our measurement layout. We're doing eddy covariance and eddy covariance plus with the deep soil moisture measurements with 6 profilers of soil moisture that are not visible here. But these are 3 different fields, and Olmo, our grad student representative here, we have other grad students, undergraduates, and we have atmospheric science people, hydrologists, and UCNR people. So a big team. And this is our distribution of our measurement stations, 6 of them across the Delta Islands. And you can see here better, we do measurements in the soil, above the soil, in the plant, on the farm scale, and then using remote sensing tools like OpenET to see how to regionally upscale. Here's the list of sensors if anyone is interested. We have eddy covariance as a main station, and then a secondary one with a lot of meteorological sensors and more soil profilers, and also the pressure transducer and a PVC tube measures in a root zone when we have water levels. And these are the 6 sites by their number in the DRIP project, their location. And then we have what is their management for the fields in the winter and in the summer. And then we already collected data for 2 water years and going into third one. This is going to be a project done by the end of next year. So still a year of data to collect. And then we have, in some cases, repetitive winter and summer management. And then we have this particular case where we have following after safflower was grown. So it's a good comparison also within the same location, 2 different years. And as you see here, similarities and differences in measurements. I didn't mention where we installed the 6 towers on the first day of experiment. They're sitting there and going through all these different management that growers decide to do, and they are under the contract with the Delta Conservancy to practice those drought management that we then quantify in their ET. Eddy covariance is a gold standard for the evapotranspiration measurements, but it has an infamous problem of energy balance closure. We apply a quality check and a gap filling, and we have same approach to correcting the data and quality check, and we can have very good closure in some cases, even a little bit more. Then in other cases, we have worse closure. So these are our best and worst case. In this worst case, we have the perfect water budget closure. So we were just in a conference where we discussed this energy balance closure, all the world micrometeorologists together to discuss. We still don't know where the problem is. Some people say measurements, some people say sensors, some people say it depends on the site. We have these 6 nearby sites doing the same amount of corrections and quality assurance, and they can differ this much. In exactly the same sensors are used, and the number of sensors, everything is identical, but we can see this. Then if we focus on cumulative water use for these 6 fields in 2024 and 2025, we see similarities and differences. Also, we have some fields managed similarly. This is the safflower in orange. It's used 36 inches in 2024 season, and then when it was followed, it used 14 inches in the next season. Pretty big difference between growing. Both years were non-irrigated. Farmers had the option to irrigate one time in the beginning of the season to start the seeds. Both years that we studied, there was a need for irrigation to start the seed, so 0 irrigation goes into this. And then when we separate for each water year between winter time and the summertime, we see that wintertime has a pretty low, because the drivers are low, the thrust of the atmosphere doesn't drive water to leave the system. So we have different management. This one that used 12 inches was flooded. So it has a little bit increase. This one that are shorter means that our cumulative values started later. We had the big gap, so we couldn't do the full winter month. Summertime, most of them using more water in 2024. This one was a non-irrigated pasture. It's green in the winter, dry in the summer, so it used a little bit more water in the winter than in the summer. Same opposite here in 2025, it used less water in the winter, more in the summer. If we go to water budgets now and account for rain, evapotranspiration, runoff, storage in the soil moisture, we have 40 inches depth sensors that measure hourly 9 depths of water. So we derive the storage, and then the unaccounted water. So this red one that had almost perfect balance, it has some imbalance in the next year, that's the one that didn't have a good energy balance closure. Other fields, we see that very little storage in the soil, in that root zone. What enters the system leaves, very small runoff in these fields. And then we have rain is almost the same in all the fields, and then evapotranspiration differs depending on the management. And then unaccounted water normally is higher where we have deep-rooted crops like safflower that can grow roots 8 to 12 feet or rye or sorghum. So we have different crops that can reach for some water that we don't measure because our measurement box for the water budget closes where our sensor reach at 40 inches. Then we have eddy covariance measurements in black here and OpenET in red. And we have this plot for 6 plots for each field, and then color coding of what management was on each day. The red vertical lines are harvest dates, and the vertical dash lines are disking. So we see that we have OpenET agree pretty well in the winter time, and when the crop is green, transpiring, growing, we have less agreement when senescence time comes and the bare soil conditions start. So OpenET is lagging a little bit. Later, that comes to a new agreement as well. In this case, we see that crop started senescing, OpenET captured as if the crop is still transpiring and it's high level, whereas we measured it's dropping. So we see things like that here. The same, we had the harvest, the values dropped in our measurements. OpenET took some time lagging, and then it started agreeing again later in the season. So these are some, this particular site, we have OpenET agreeing in the first year, where we have greening of the canopy and senescence, but then in the second year, they seem to vary in the similar fashion, but there is some offset in values measured. So when we take now these cumulative values to compare in black, the measured ET from the ground measurements and cumulative measured using OpenET, we see these left parts of the cumulative values are 2024 and 2025 is the right part of each plot. So we see in different years, and different sites, we have different agreements. The red line is OpenET ensemble, and these thinner lines with less color, those are different models that enter OpenET. So we have some of the models agreeing better to our measurements, some of them driving that ensemble to be higher than our measurements. Sometimes there are fields where it measures exactly what we measure, whether it was the high ET year or low, we see agreements. We see in some cases it underestimates ET cumulative values within the same field. When we have following, it shows us similar to our measurements. We have part of the season where it agrees better, part of the season where we have discrepancies. So we still can't find what is the consistency in underestimating, overestimating, or agreeing, but it seems that most of the time in the bare soil and senescing season, which is good news for irrigation scheduling, where people need to irrigate, they can download credible values. When there's no need of irrigation, there is less credible, but people don't reach for those values to schedule irrigation then. Forrest, you have a hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yep. Forrest, you might be muted there. You are muted.
You are muted if you're speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, Kosana. I just wanted to flag for the group that these are still preliminary results and that, even though we've been asking for 2 years now, that you still haven't shared the sites with us, the siting of the instruments. As you showed, as we know, there are some of the towers on the edges of fields that are managed differently. And so I don't know if these have been filtered for wind direction, how the footprints have been extracted, like all of that. So I just wanted to flag for the group that these are still preliminary. And Kosana, I'm really hoping that you and Jay and I can sit down and go through the siting issues and how the data is being filtered so that we can understand some of these discrepancies. So just wanted to underscore that these are still preliminary and we've delivered all the data to UC Davis, but haven't received anything in return.
Yeah, that's true. It's still going through quality check. The values that were initially presented were less quality check than today. as we collect more data, we also learn more about what the delta local conditions are. So we filter it in a different way as the time goes by. So these results keep improving. And
I understand that, but if you're at the point where we're sharing the results, I think it's important then to actually, but then that means we're ready to sit down and go through the siting issues and the quality control issues on the eddy covariance data, which as we know can be high quality, but depending on how the data is processed and the energy balance closure issues can also have very large uncertainties, especially if the wind is not blowing over the measurement site. So that's a really important thing to talk about.
Yeah, so our lab is expert. Everyone in our lab is expert in this measurements. So we do filter for winds. We don't take into account data if they're coming from the ditch or the road. We just take the data that comes from the field, taking the signal from across the field.
Yeah, understood. But if the OpenET data is always pulled from the field, that can introduce biases and errors. So looking forward to talking with you now that the data is at the point where it can be shared.
Yeah, I just want to make sure for the group that they know that the quality assurance is made and that we know what we're doing because this is our expertise. So we took into account your comments and we did check for the footprint, where the pixel is taken from, where the pixel fits, and there's no sighting issues, I assure you, and everyone on the call. So the towers are put into the field where the predominant wind come through whole field, and we pick it up at the station where we had two station simulation that would show unclear wind direction. We would go install the measurements to get our own wind data on that particular field so that we know that the sighting is done well. So no sighting issues, and we don't have to discuss that anymore. The quality assurance might improve as we learn more about the delta, but at this point we have 2 years of data, so our quality assurance is increasing in what we account for. Now, when we compare the water and the carbon data, because these measurements simultaneously measure CO2 and water vapor, of course, as expected, the more ET, the more water used, the more green grows, the more uptake of CO2 we have. So we see this same plot now, just measurements of ET and the CO2 and how they vary through this different management. And then we plotted for each of these sites, which you can see at the x-axis, 34, 55, each of these drip identifiers for the sites. We have the balances of carbon on annual basis for the dry season and for the wet season. So wet, cold season is in blue, orange is the warm, dry, and then green is the average of whole year. So we see that in some cases we have uptake of carbon in the winter, release in the drier season, and then we have on annual balance we have uptake in some cases. In some cases we have a release. So where we have around 0 or negative, that's more uptake, so good news for subsidence concerns. We have 104 site that has a lot of smoke coming into the area, so that we don't know how to remove this data, because if the smoke is coming into your area, it increases our fluxes more, but also is realistically happening. So we're still looking in this 104 site, and we're taking 2 different sensors for eddy covariance to have more measurements that are replicated so that we compare what would be the measurement in the area, but that smoke is giving us pretty much offset. And yeah, I was about to say that these are still preliminary results. I am happy that we can study water and carbon simultaneously and recommend that in all experiments. It hasn't been always the case in our experiments, but this is well-funded project where we got that opportunity, also deep soil measurements. And then when we compare remote sensing ET with our measurements, it might fall short in the leaf senescence and post-harvest periods. And we have very good collaboration with our growers that are funded to do this project with us and adjust their management practices. And we were unable to quantify irrigation or runoff because these fields are huge and it's difficult to find how to install the outflow siphons and irrigation. There hasn't been, from conversations with farmers, we know there wasn't any irrigation. So that's it for now. Any other questions?
Wow. So that's a wealth of very rich data, and as with Kirk, the more data we have, the more open questions that might raise. I know Forrest has raised a few of those. I think it would benefit us to have a small technical subgroup, to kind of dig further into what you're seeing and what you think is happening there. So let's please be in touch after. One thing that question that I have is how would you describe for a layperson the energy balance closure issue?
So we assume that every plant transpires at the same rate and that the fields are uniform and big enough, and that we capture all in our measurements in the vertical transport. Now, some of the components of energy balance might not be measured. So maybe our fluxes of vertical transport are in most of the cases correct, but we just don't have that one component that is difficult to measure, but it's not reflected in ET or heating of the air. So in some fields, some of these can be more pronounced and we can have less energy balance. In some fields, we can have totally dominated process of evapotranspiration. It takes up all the energy and we don't see that energy balance lack of closure.
Great. I think we might have time for one or two more questions before we close. Did we need to have time for Campbell to give any speech? I'm sorry if we're running out.
Oh yeah, this is Campbell. I think I wouldn't truncate this conversation. Go ahead and I can update at the next meeting if need be.
Great. Thanks, Campbell, for that.
Any other questions for Kusna? And I'm really glad to see, more on the ground measurements of the delta. Obviously, one question is kind of the broader water balance. I get the impression from these sites that we've been studying crop practices and irrigation practices and the differences. But also I get the impression that the sites are so different hydrologically, in their perhaps just in their siting, the soil types, the particular depth of subsidence and so on. Can you address what you've learned there about the different sites?
I think that what we see in the carbon, that non-irrigated pasture doesn't release more carbon being dry for such a long period is because it's more on the mineral soils on the outskirts of the delta. So we try to represent all the different conditions with all these 6 sites, but we see that some of the sites in this deep soil moisture, they have seepage and they're flooded unintentionally, have a lot of natural vegetation. We treat them as a fallow, but they're actually so close to the river that they always have vegetation and high AT. So yeah, the siting of the position of different sites is really informative, and then having smoke very often in the air in some of the sites totally confuses us how to interpret that carbon. Is that generated from the field in the soil? Is soil off-gassing carbon, or is it just like advected carbon coming into the area and we measure it as a flux? So yeah, a
Interesting.
lot of different challenges.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of our presenters today and for everyone for attending. Now noticing that we are out of time here. So if there's any other questions, please contact us offline. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you all. Appreciate the continued investment and work in this space and value all of your contributions.
Thank you for all
Thanks
your patience and leadership, Jay.
Great. Thanks.